Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Awesome.
likewise. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, Trying to get a few more people on here before we begin. Oh yeah, there we go. I think there people are starting to pop up. Do you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience? We have our president online as well, Daniel Thompson.
Awesome. So my name is Gareth Hood. I am, how do I introduce myself? I guess I'm a artist, slash father, slash dog owner, slash kind of do jack of all trades, I'd say. Um, and so yeah, I've been recently doing a lot of art, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was pretty young, about earlier than second grade, so kindergarten, first grade. And so I've gone through a lot of challenges in growing up dealing with that, and but I've overcome those challenges and worked through things.
Yeah, well, can we start there? Like, I
Yeah.
want to get into all the stuff that you're doing because jack of all trades sounds like the right thing based on all. But like, what led to you being diagnosed, and how did they find out so young?
Well, I was very fortunate enough to have my mom and my dad. My dad was dyslexic as well, and my mom specialized in early childhood education. So she noticed right away and picked up on the symptoms. And so they went and got me tested. I remember getting tested and very going into. We traveled for like a weekend, and we went and I sat in a room and did tests for 2 days. And they diagnosed me with dyslexia and ADHD.
Were you when you got diagnosed? Was it a relief? Were you frustrated? Were you, do you
I don't think I really realized it at that time. I was
uh,
so young.
sure.
I just knew I didn't really. I mean, I didn't know what was going on, and my parents didn't really focus on like I had having a dyslexia.
Yeah.
It was just more of like overcoming the challenges and figuring out how to get me to learn.
And then for the audience, did you grow up in Oregon and were you diagnosed here, or did you have to get go outside the state to get diagnosed?
So I grew up in Washington,
Okay.
actually Yakima, Washington. And so when I got diagnosed, we went to the Tri-Cities when
Okay.
I got tested. And so, but that this was, I mean, quite a long time ago. And so things have definitely streamlined since then.
Yeah, I got diagnosed young too, and I grew up in Oregon, but we actually went to California for some of the
Mm,
testing. So, fortunate as well, like yourself. So,
yeah.
I can definitely relate. What was school like for you then? Like,
School was challenging. I mean, I had a auditory dyslexia as well, but by the second grade, I was able to kind of get through that and put. I mean, I was mixing up my words and my sentences, and the second grade, I was able to put the right words in the right order in the sentences. But I needed additional help and additional time for things all the way through school till I graduated.
okay.
I was learning at a level comparable with my grade, but I just needed extra time to do so.
Yeah, a lot of the students, so again, we're with the International Dyslexia Association, Oregon branch, and we have a student panel, and a lot of them talk about dyslexia as this time disability of like just needing more time and just needing space to actually
Hmm.
just navigate their world.
Yeah, I mean, it puts a lot of stress on kids, and I still deal with that stress, like when taking tests. I have such bad test anxiety to the point where, I mean, I can tell you, growing up, I didn't pass a single test the first time. Um, and just because I got such anxiety over it, and then they realized that they could give me the test verbally, and I was able to pass the first time. So, but once they figured that out, that things were a lot smoother for me.
That's awesome. Did you go on to college after high school, or like what did you end up doing?
So after high school, I mean, I worked in retail quite a bit. I didn't go on to any college. I think it was more of like I was so like traumatized by school,
Sure.
and I didn't I didn't want to like to keep going. So I did. I worked in retail and I worked as a manager in retail for like 15 years. And so,
That's
and
awesome.
then at one point I ventured off and moved to Texas and helped train tigers for a little bit.
No way.
And, and then I came back and went back to retail and then I went into banking and now I'm a software product manager.
Um, any like experiences from training tigers that was like relatable, like to
I mean, it's
any?
interesting. I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting journey to go into something like that. You learn a lot about animals, and I think, um, it really teaches you hard work. But I think people with dyslexia are like hard workers anyways, because we have to work so hard.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that was something that definitely helped me in that position was because you're up all hours of the night helping the cats. Like we used to raise and feed baby tigers, and so we were up at all hours of the night feeding the cats and making sure everything's okay. So you let them sleep, but you just get keep going. So
Yeah, it's that resiliency, right? It's that grittiness that comes with dyslexia that allows us to kind of this that continual effort. And I think what's so cool about your story is there's so many pathways to reaching success, right? And what that can look like. And there's not just this one avenue that we're kind of all programmed towards.
yeah.
Um, can I ask how you got into programming or like where did
Oh,
that?
well, product management. So what I mean, I'm a very like creative person, and so when I worked at the bank, I was lucky enough to be put on an innovation team, and we were there to help build an app for the bank for communication. In fact, so it's basically a texting app. Um, and so I was really good at finding the bugs, and so they called me the bug hunter. And so I ended up moving over to the technology side of things. And then I'm always wanting to learn more and more. And I had some really good mentors within my company who assisted me with that. And so I wanted to learn more about product and how to be a product manager. And so they let me into that space and mentored me through it. And so they really assisted me to get to where I am now.
That's so awesome. So it's
Yeah.
kind of that continual growth, right?
Yeah.
And I think with dyslexia, like that gives us a growth mindset. Like we love learning. It's just
Hmm.
how are we learning and how's the information being
Yeah.
positioned to us versus
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, it definitely goes down to the resilience of like finding the way how you learn, and then keeping sticking to it. And then if something stops, like you notice you're not like retaining the information, like trying something else. And so something my dad always said was like never give up, never surrender. And that's like always keep trying something until you figure it out.
that's great advice. And it's a great message for this audience, you know, when we have students that are kind of in the thick of it, like going through it right now. So I think that's so important. Can we talk about your outlet? Because you have this artistic outlet that where did that come from and how did that evolve?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere. Thanks to, I guess it kind of came out of the byproduct of COVID-19. So we were stuck at home with the kids, and I was really just doing arts and stuff with my oldest, and we were drawing at the kitchen table, and I was going to draw my hand, and so I drew my hand, and I was like, wow, that's actually pretty good. And then I kind of got into like acrylic pouring, so it's like you take paint, you kind of layer it, and then you pour it onto a canvas, and it makes cool designs. But I wasn't very satisfied with like how I mean, I guess it wasn't my niche. So then I had all this paint. So it's like, what do I do with this paint and all this canvas? So let me just try something. And so I ended up trying a few pieces, and people were like, wow, that's really good. Like, can I get that? Can I get one of those? And I was like, well. sure. I mean, I don't know. It was just like something I just made on the side. And so then it just came more popular to the point where I'm like, okay, this actually might be a thing. So now I work my day job during the day and then I paint at night. And so it is a good outlet because it really like keeps me calm and lets me like a good outlet, I guess, for thinking about not my work in a sense. So
Absolutely. Really quick and transitioning back, did you have outlets growing up as a kid? Did you, or was it always art, or was there other things that?
it was never art,
Oh,
which is so crazy because my parents I was talking to my mom about this and my new outlet and and she's like, well, I'm so glad you found your talent again. Like you've always been a really good artist, and I didn't know that I was a good artist at all. And I've got some good artists in my family, and so, but it was a very new. Um, I definitely had. I mean, I did sports, but nothing was like really concrete as far as like outlets go.
so you didn't get anything out of sport? Like, what sports did you play? Do you remember?
I
Like,
did cross country,
okay.
so I was a runner. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I did, I mean, basketball and baseball, but I was never that coordinated enough in a sense to be super good at it.
I didn't. I had the coordination issues with baseball. Like, I mean, I love the sport, but I never had the coordination to actually like participate at a high level within it.
Yeah.
Do you remember doing any art as a kid? Like,
I mean, we had during like art class and stuff like that. I'd done art, but not to the point where like it was more of like just school art. It wasn't like just for fun art, or I was never trying to create that. And I think back of like maybe why I never thought I was good at art, and that's kind of like I really am really hard on myself when it comes to projects and stuff, and so I think what of it was is it may have been good, but it wasn't like good enough for me in a sense.
mhm.
And so I always wanted to make things better or do it better, and if it wasn't perfect, I didn't think it was good enough.
Do you think that comes from being dyslexic? Like, I feel like
Yeah,
my biggest critic, like
yeah.
constantly harping on it.
Yeah, I mean, just growing up, you being dyslexic, you're always like told that something, or I mean, I was at the time. Um, you had to really try, and it wasn't a lot of things. It took you a long time to go do things. So same thing, you kind of like have this expectation or mindset that it's going to take you, or it's not good enough, or you have to keep trying to make it better. And I mean, yeah, it's just I think part of it is.
Yeah. Do you have a message that you give like students or teachers or educators? Like, do you have a message for them or like what you would want them to know kind of going through it?
I mean, I think as far as students go, like you just have to keep trying and never give up. I think teachers is just really like pay attention and like maybe try different things with students, like and yeah, try different things of how that student might learn. Um, and then as far as like parents go, it's just like find the resources, look for resources. I mean, my mom said the same thing. It's just like, if you're a parent with dyslexia, go and find resources and find the people who will help you and don't stop until you get the right resources.
I think that's three amazing pieces of advice for the students. Just keep plugging away, like, because you never know when it's going to unfold, and the light is at the end of the tunnel. You're kind of in the thick of it. But for
Yeah.
educators, the oral exam, right? Like, give your students a chance to show what they know, like how important that is, and then there's just not one pathway. I think we get so hung up on that. And I love your story because you do all these amazing things and there wasn't just, it's not one avenue to get there.
Yeah.
Any hidden like other hidden talents that you've like noticed or like, I mean, from training animals to working in
Oh, no.
retail?
I mean, yeah, I'm good at problems. I mean, I would say I'm like the biggest problem. My problem solving skills, and I think that's also due to having dyslexia, is like I love puzzles and I love to solve things, like to solve problems.
What
That's kind of my,
do you so like puzzles like spatially, you're
yeah.
able to do that?
So here's a funny story. My dad used to love when doing projects with him because he would have a toolbox full of like just lots of tools, and he could never find the right wrench. And I could look at something and just automatically find it right away just by looking at it, what wrench or what nut or screw it would fit. And so that was kind of like I guess my hidden talent is my spatial awareness is really, really good.
That visual perception. We
Mhm.
have a question from the line. Did you know other dyslexic students as a kid? Finding that dyslexic community seems to be a big help for the current students going through it.
Yeah, at the time there wasn't like a great community like you guys have now. I didn't maybe necessarily know that those people growing up were dyslexic. It wasn't like something like this is the dyslexic group. Uh, and so we weren't like, it was just my group of friends. So I mean, I don't know of any of them, or at least none of them let me know like they were dyslexic growing up. But yeah.
You had probably a similar experience to what I had. Like I just didn't know. I mean, I didn't know people till I was older.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that's just because of the age of which we grew up, and the resources at the time.
Would you have any advice for students that are kind of feeling that way right now, that are kind of feel like they're kind of in it alone? Is there
I
anything that
mean,
you found that was helpful?
I think of it as just like, it's a, I think growing up it was like a coping mechanism, which was like, it's a game. So we just have to follow the rules of the game, but doesn't mean we can't finish the game. We just have to figure out our path through the game. And so that's kind of the way I thought about it. And it's just come up with new ideas and don't be afraid to like reach out to somebody and let them know what's going on because you will get support and people will be supportive of you.
That was another question I had for you is like, did you find yourself advocating with the teachers at all, or was it kind of you were just kind of taking them?
Yeah, I didn't really know. At least I can't remember at the time that I was advocating. I was just more of like, I don't know what's going on. I know I don't learn the same. Um, and I have to kind of figure it out. But I had some really great teachers that worked with me, and so I was very. I think that was the biggest blessing is the support of my parents and the support of the teachers that were willing to work with me and figure it out.
And I think that's important for our parents and educators to hear is what that support can do and how
Mhm.
that can boost somebody.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think self-confidence, like there was, I mean, I can tell you, I can vividly remember like times where I was really struggling with learning something, and the teacher would build my confidence up, and it was like a trigger the very next day. I went through like 7 tests, um, and just the confidence level of me at that time was good, and I ended up killing it in the test. But if your confidence is low, I ended up struggling with assignments.
we have another question, and I don't maybe you have some advice like looking back on it, but how would you tell a teacher about being dyslexic as a student? Maybe how would you address that?
I mean, I think it's it, just because a student is struggling with something, or possibly, I guess, acting out. It's not that they don't want to learn. It's they don't know. Maybe they don't even know themselves of like what's going on. And so working with them and trying to understand where they're coming from, and what challenges that is frustrating them. Um, in order to help them to move forward.
I think that's great. So the rule on this show is that the guest gets the last word, and you dropped so many golden nuggets. So if you want to repeat one of those,
Oh man.
but what's your message to the world?
I think my message is, and it's always been, is never give up on what you're trying to do and just keep pushing. Um, that's kind of my motto is I've never given up on anything. And I just keep trying until I figure it out.
I love that. That is a great way to end it. Just never give up and just keep trying to problem solve until figure it out. And I
Yeah.
love how you use the analogy, and somebody else, I think Jane mentioned that as well, is that if it's a game, then you gotta continue to play the game. You're never out of it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time. I know you got
Yeah.
a ton of things you're doing, so we appreciate you taking a Monday night to talk with us.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great night.
Thanks. Have a good one.